Right. Yeah, that's exactly.
Oh, they sent us away somewhere else. Oh, it went to a reading, and it lived a life, but I wanted to pass it on.
So you're
No, Teddy, that's so a lot of that. It has to be. Yeah. What's your step?
How are you?
It's surprising because you're expecting to get regular stuff.
Yes. Her brother, Uncle Sean.
I know it,
Friend of ours.
I think the link. It's gonna be,
Yeah.
you can share it.
Yeah. I thought they were gonna be gone by now.
I hope, we're doing that very DIY.
All those that DIY, but I think we'll be able to.
We were in New York last week. And I told Sean, I'm like, I have this window. And he was like, wow, this time I'm trying to get brand new. Got the because the last time I was there.
Tulu, where are you from?
Three of us.
She got lost and she said, where do I go?
And he was like, oh, yeah, I like
It's in Nortesque. It's her mom. I had to come out to LA, you know, he wanted to come back here. No. Did you go to the, you didn't go to the.
By the time I looked it up, it was only.
Oh, the.
The.
He makes me nervous, so forget it. Be glad your mom's here.
Right?
And I'm
But we saw.
So we're here. This is your friend or is it
Here. And so he's like, to have this night.
Somebody came with a box.
Thank you.
There's so much water.
So, where, oh, here. Is this the clicker?
Because he had the windows that were before him.
I got it. And I didn't send you that. I can send it, I'm live streaming it on YouTube. It's all about your stuff, but you know.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. It'll be good.
I used to see it.
No.
She's, I get it. Thank you for keeping her word out there.
Oh, absolutely.
She's, that'll just give me.
I was saying how it's that 5 years reading.
5 years of her life.
More than I read it, more than I loved it.
It's just, there's many times, there's one line, right, Money, I always tell her, this story is true. Yeah, I would tell her that.
Definitely resonates.
Yes.
So.
So I'm meeting like, okay, so I didn't know.
You can say one with the ear. There is a microphone here, so you want to use
Somebody can help. Does anybody know on an Android how to drop a pin on an Android? Don't know where they are.
I don't even know what you're talking about.
Because rather than just texting them, right, you can just drop a pin.
She's like, I don't know what it is.
That's fine. So I think that the run of show that I'm working before I did. Otherwise, I want welcome and introduce you all. And once we do the introduction, get started. If you want, like, it doesn't know that you're however you want, but if you want, I can give you, like, after for like. It's like when you see it, it's like you were talking to me. And if you see 1 minute, it's like, yeah.
And next to this lady, forget it.
Which
I mean, I'm jealous.
No. They're so familiar.
Oh, yeah. It's hard. I don't know.
Running around to make sure,
Yeah. I'm kind of being fully.
Yeah, see, don't you have something now?
So I don't.
That's another, yeah.
So I'm gonna check on the other camera.
Okay, so.
I don't know. Absolutely.
I did not check the detail, that's the one thing.
I checked this. It was only on my phone. I don't know if that is right. I didn't see it, but I
I think that you would have to do it from here. Let's see. Well, it plays, but it doesn't.
Big line. Okay. The name of, I just like to Right.
Yeah, but it's coming from here. Well, if they don't play, I mean, they're gonna.
That's true. I mean, it's just,
I mean, he plays, but it doesn't.
It's always, it's just what, I personally prefer like physical stuff, so I don't have to deal with like the unpredictability of tech. Yeah. That's just me. Because it's a new, it's a new thing, right, yeah. Right. No, it's not universal, it's not the same plug everywhere, yeah.
Yeah, we'll start.
Yeah. The questions that I sent you about this conversation. Absolutely, yeah. That sounds good. Interview you did. Yeah, that was really good. Yeah, a lot of good info. So just keeping it casual. I think that's good. So one thing I can mention is that one word that kind of centers presentation is memory. That was the word that kind of clicked for me. So your work, and unfortunately, I didn't get to dive into with some of your but you're doing so much stuff. And there's something really special about it. And they talk about that. And I want to go with we are remembering and we are the way that we can is Yeah. I mean, I remember first grade, my friend, okay, they had a lottery. That's what it was. And we were kind of, I kind of have that. That's high school, I was a lot. Yeah. I haven't watched a lot of these now. Yeah.
I got your stuff here for the next time.
During, it was good, that was during the first one. That was, yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah, that was the second one. Yeah. I'm pretty thankful for a long time. I don't need
Make the camera
So happy that one. It was in March. Yeah, I know, everybody's getting one, so. No, no, like. When's the last time you lost shot? I can't. Did you guys see? I like that. So I yeah. Regular folk. Yeah. Let me see who else is lost. It took, and we gave ourselves plenty of time. Yeah. And what was, what happened? No. They said 11:30. That's, I love that so much. It's for blessed people, you know, the blessed. You don't know. Okay, so you're talking about memory. When I was in English. So the English is the memory that they see. Yeah. Yeah, so it would be four things. So before things got too crazy. But for us, we have competition. Yeah, I have the 96 period where the world was starting to go crazy. That's so great. So, no. Because I'm gonna go back and ponder. Oh, okay. No, because you're trying to remember where that came from. And he's still in class, right? And then my son was, I was 20 because. And you Yeah. And so I don't even know if I like it. But actually, yeah, came out there, getting off the bus, he came out from like, kind of, just wrote down, everything I saw that day. And then we took the bus from Point to them.
Okay, so it's 103. Hello, everyone. It's 103. We'll wait for a couple minutes. These are the first panels of the day. I'm sure people are still finding stuff. Okay. 2 more minutes. During the presentation, if you that if you want to still move around so you can see it better, that's something. I think I'll be over there, but.
Do you need to just raise that table? The camera. The camera.
Camera. Let me see. Good. Thank you. Good call. Let's see.
You want to go one back?
It's on YouTube. I sent. Yeah. Yes.
Send it to Alexa, Flavio.
Yes.
I just posted it on Facebook and
Let me,
Instagram.
I'll send it.
Let me know what the view like.
our little one is in New York, she couldn't make it.
How does it look? I don't know.
Yeah, and she's coming home tonight.
Oh, there you go. That's good.
Yep. Good shot composition. I mean, 330. Okay.
I know.
Let me just move it. That way it's here. There it is. Brian, just want to say hi. Why are you?
Oh, yeah. I'm good. Thank you. No, no problem.
Can I sit here?
Okay, so we're gonna get started. It's 1:06, and we don't want to make this too long. First of all, good afternoon, everyone. You're here. You made it from LA traffic and also the USC parking.
And parking spaces.
It's on Riddle too. So thank you all for being here. My name is Jorge Leal. I'm assistant professor of history at UC Riverside, and I'm really excited, as Diego in our theories of the 90s per se in Selena. Me siento muy excited to just be invited to moderate this panel put together by Cecilia and that includes Maricela and Laura. And as we reflect on Maricela's work, but also on the history of LA spoken word scene of the 90s and a little bit backwards and also forward. So we're in for really a treat today of conversation and some readings as well. So let me do the kind of like academic thing of introducing people, but we're gonna keep it much more conversational today. But I do want to introduce our panelists in a proper way. So first of all, Cecilia Camillo recently earned her master's at Dominguez Hills. Yes, and she's a first-generation Mexican-American, cultural critic, artist, and educator from South Central Los Angeles. And I will interject the introduction here that it was one of our first meetings about the work here happened around here, somewhere over here, like in South Central, and she was telling me about like we were sharing what we were working on, and she was telling me about what she was envisioning her thesis to be, which ends up being the purpose of this work. Cecilia earned her BA in psychology, and recently her master's in English literature in 2023. Both of them from Cal State University of Dominguez Hills. And her grad work focused on the evolving Chicana feminisms, and also the cultural identity and the aesthetics of the work of Boy Maricela Nortesque, and also Maricela's contribution to the world, the spoken word scene in LA. We also have Laura Mercado. She's a spoken word artist from Boyle Heights and holds a BA from American Culture and Literature with a Chicano Studies minor from UCLA. Competition here. And after discovering this happens after her degree at UCLA happens after discovering her voice at East LA College. Yes, ELAC. Huskies, right?
Yes. ELAC Huskies.
Right. Where she became a prolific writer and grassroots organizer. She published in poetry magazines from 92 to 96, and also performed at numerous venues and academic venues as well. Other places such as Southwest Graphics, back on Atlantic, I would say.
No, it was on Brooklyn.
Brooklyn, yes, correct. And Troy Cafe. Yes.
Yeah.
That was in Little Tokyo. No,
On First Street.
Yes. And also engaged with Chicanx art collectives like the Illegal Interns and El Teatro, where she showcased her work. And also we cannot forget Generación in Highland Park, and also the retrospective exhibit that happened at Vincent Price Art Gallery in 2018. So thank you, Laura, for being here. And now Maricela. Maricela is considered one of the most important literary voices to come out of She doesn't need really an introduction, but I need to give it all kinds of shout outs. She's a prominent figure in the LA spoken word scene throughout the 1980s, 1990s, where she contributed to various spoken word performances, and also recordings such as the compilation Black and Tan Club and Disclosure, that's Voices of Women, and the solo album Nortesque/Word. In 2008, Norte published her first collection of poetry in print, which is Peeping Tom Tom Girl. And she continues making contributions to the art and literary community. And also I cannot overemphasize her Instagram page, which is the way she captures Los Angeles through her lens, through her phone lens. It's magnificent. So check out her Instagram. So thank you, Marcela. You did that?
Awesome. Alright, do you want me to close the doors again? Okay. Alright, everyone. So I'm gonna wear my mask. Let me get comfortable. I'm not used to whatever the new normal is supposed to be, so just bear with me. Can everybody hear me? Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here, everybody. I want to keep this kind of casual and conversational because after all, this is kind of what the scene and the spoken word scene is about. And so we want to kind of dive in here. So before I kind of jump into everything, I have a question for you all. Who or what do you think of when you remember the 1990s? You can shout out your answer.
Maricela.
Okay, Marisela, what else?
Hip-hop, Selena.
One more time.
Hip-hop and Selena, Selena.
Selena and hip hop, okay, what else?
Arena nightclub.
Arena nightclub, okay. I'm getting a lot of unexpected answers, this is great. What else?
Tupac.
Tupac, thank you, awesome, me too. What else? Nirvana, yes, awesome. Yes,
Florentine Gardens.
one more time.
Florentine Gardens.
Florentine Gardens, okay, awesome. Anything else?
Spoken word.
There you
Spoken
go.
word, what else?
Troy Cafe.
Troy Cafe. Chalino? Okay, yeah, I remember Chalino. Okay, these are unexpected answers. I was expecting more, but this is an unexpected audience, right? So that's fantastic that you guys shared some unexpected answers because there is something that I want us to kind of focus on for today, which is the concept of memory. Whose memories do we remember? Whose do we choose to focus on? And why, right? So recently I read a book called The 90s that talked about all of the things that happened in the 90s. There's a bit of an obsession, I would say, with the 90s, especially around people my age, this solution millennials, about remembering our childhoods and all the great stuff that we liked. But the issue is that things weren't as great for everybody, even if we want to look back at it with these rose-tinted glasses. And in this book, by Chuck Klosterman, he says, there is always a disconnect between the world we seem to remember and the world that actually was. What's complicated about the 1990s is that the central illusion is memory itself. So again, whose history, whose memory do we remember, right? And so, with that, okay, so this is what we're going to go over today. We're going to talk a little bit about the evolution of Chicana identity and aesthetics in the 1990s. We're going to talk a little bit about spoken word and contextualizing the history of it. And then we're going to have performances by Laura and Maricela. And then we're going to dive into ephemera and memories. And finally, the people, locations, and happenings of the time. Okay, so diving right in. So defining and evolving Chicana identity and aesthetics in the 90s. So what you see in front of you is the artwork and the CD, as well as the back end of the spoken word album, Nortesque. So this album came into my hands via a burned copy back in 2017. My thesis mentor, who's here in the audience, gave me a copy. I went home and I listened to it, had to dust off my old CD player, and I was so amazed, shocked, and just in awe of what I heard, because it was something that was so familiar and it's something that I recognized, and it resonated with me very deeply as a child of the 90s. These stories about riding the bus seemed to me much like going to the callejones with my mom, which we frequented a lot. I remember I got a pair of blue sunglasses. They had blue lenses, and I thought I looked so cool. I was probably like 8 years old. And so that held a lot of special memories for me. And obviously, Maricela's artistic sensibility was so impressive. It was unlike anything that I understood Chicana poetry to be. I recognized the references to film, the references to LA. It was all so specific, yet so different and unique. And so that kind of drove me to the possibility of writing my thesis on her. The program, or the project I originally had in mind, was much more expansive, and thankfully by the end of it I realized, well, there's only one poet I really want. So I recognized that there was a gap in the literature that I wanted to kind of dive into, which is the role of spoken word poetry regarding the third wave feminism. There was also a need to understand, define, and really break down this notion of what Chicana aesthetics could be after the 1980s, meaning moving away from the new mestiza. And also just, I need to define new terms that can explain the artistic sensibilities better. So, released in 1991, Norte Word was released through New Alliance Records. And the album holds historical significance as a kind of in-between piece, meaning that it came as a product of the 80s, product of the spoken word scene, and a product of the 80s feminism that was still taking place, but also came in 1991, which was at the beginning of the third wave, and later it was a predecessor to the spoken word scene that would come after it. So what makes this album special is that it focuses on working class Chicana Latina women in LA, or AS, as they're referred to by the Queen Tom Girl, which you'll hear more about. And so the listener is given an insight into the lives of these women, their dreams, their illusions, their aspirations, their conflicts, but most importantly, their memories. And by documenting their lives that would otherwise go unnoticed or lost to history, it preserves their memories, and through their lived experiences, it captures the evolving landscape of Reagan-era Los Angeles, which was not always kind to people of color, or anybody who was not white and wealthy. So the album utilized a new, at the time, and I specify at the time, medium, which was the compact disc. And the compact disc was barely getting popular, getting kind of at the height of its popularity. And so because it was on CD, it was easier for it to move around. It was easier for people to distribute it. And it developed a cult following. It also allowed for it to flourish outside of the typical text anthologies. And for all these reasons, Norte Word contributes to the expansion of what Chicana theorist Alma M. Garcia refers to as post-movement Chicana consciousness. And so, just taking a moment to, and we're going to dive into the artwork here, but I just want to say that there's no way to not stop and wonder what is this about. Before you even press play, this image really gravitates you into the work, and so I just wanted to highlight that. Okay. Okay, so one of the things that initially I ran into an issue kind of trying to figure out how to define the work, how to analyze it, because I couldn't figure out a certain framework for it. I knew that it was feminist and I knew that it was Chicana, but I didn't know in what way it kind of, how to fit it into this time. And especially because it was historically within the 80s and the 90s. So that was the most challenging aspect for me. And so at some point I realized, well, the work is going to give me the answers. And so diving back into the work, I came up with the term Nortesque. And so the term takes inspiration from auteur theory. Any kind of term that you've heard, like Burtonesque or Lynchian or Kubrickian, that's kind of the angle that I'm going at here. Because of Maricela's interest in film, I wanted to use that and to incorporate it as a way of defining her artistic sensibilities. And so what the Nortesque is, a rough definition is, it is a bicultural aesthetic sensibility influenced by global media, popular culture, and that creates a poetic collage. An example of that would be the poster that is here. So there's a bunch of different images. There's the use of Spanish. There are images from magazines as well as, it would be like movie crosswords. Yeah, crosswords. And so a bunch of different things kind of mixed together. This is very, very Nortesque. So this is just a visual representation of what the writing is. And so different elements of Nortesque is global and local popular culture, ephemeral moments, bilingual wordplay, cinematic imagery, as well as performance. And so Nortesque is also something that can be used really to define anyone who, or any kind of sensibility that takes inspiration from global media and that lives in North America. So El Norte, taking a little cue from Maricela, playing on with words, So it can really define anybody else who kind of falls into this category, as well as Maricela's work. And it is representative of the evolving Chicana identity that was happening at the time. It was moving away from folk imagery and indigenous sensibilities to something much more contemporary. And so as we can see here, another way to kind of see the Nortesque, the concept of the Nortesque, is through Maricela's poetic curated image. So here we have a photo by Jean Carrillo, and this is kind of a reading that Maricela did. And you'll notice the black suit. So that takes inspiration from Fellini heroines such as Anuka Me and Monica Vita here on the left, as well as Maria Felix. And the name, Peeping Tom Tom Girl, comes from the film by Michael Powell, a career-ending film which predates Psycho and is probably better than Psycho. Dare I say that? Very, very good movie. And Maricela takes the name of the Peeping Tom, the concept of the Peeping Tom, and subverts it. And so, all very interesting concepts. All right, spoken word in context. All right, so Harvey Kubernik. So spoken word went through a bit of a transformation through the 80s. There was a lot of happenings in the 80s that kind of predate Kubernik. And they happened in different locations, and to try to kind of summarize it would be impossible. We don't have enough time. But Harvey Kubernik did something extra. He went an extra step. He is a former music journalist, and he decided to put artists on record. And so he did that by asking folks to come in and just do anything that had to do with words. So he expanded the term of spoken word to go beyond poetry. And in an interview for the LA Times in 1989, Kubernik described the expansiveness of spoken word as something that is spoken and not sung, a book reading, a poem, an extemporaneous speech, social satire, or just plain observations. It was released, the albums were released under his record label, Freeway Records, which was later changed to New Alliance. And these albums featured new, again, I emphasize at the time, technology. Kubernik sought out diverse Angelino voices to feature in his recordings, and he marketed these albums and performances like musicians with tours and radio play. So here are 3 examples of the original spoken word trilogy that Kubernik put out. And so these are big, big records. I happen to have English as a second language. The first one he released was Voices of the Angels in 1982, English as a second language in 83, and Neighborhood Rhythms in 1984. These albums were compilations. There were unique compilations of Los Angeles at the time, of 1980s. They blurred the lines between poetry, performance, art, and music, and they incorporated both newcomers as well as veteran performers from all backgrounds. So you had very established writers, and you also had kind of punk rockers that needed some money and something to do. And so these albums were quite expansive, but, and I say this because I do own one of them, these were great representations of the vastness of the scene, but they lacked any kind of focus, and so it's easy to kind of get lost in the mixture of it all. But luckily, Kubernik shifted his focus to feature more specific compilations and special collaborative projects, as well as solo records, which you see here. So Disclosure and Black and Tan Club, which were mentioned earlier, where Maricela was featured in, these are much more focused records. We have Disclosure, which was an all-women's anthology, and Black and Tan Club, which was Latino and Black poets. And I also want to briefly mention Twin Sisters, because I feel like this record, which is here on the bottom, features Wanda Coleman and Exene Cervenga. This album is kind of lost to history. Well, I feel like it encompasses what Kubernik was trying to do with these albums, to combine the music and the punk rock, and the music and the literature, and to have a more novice and as well as professional writer. Wanda Coleman was an accomplished writer. She's here. She'll be here on the left-hand side to you guys. And so she was a very accomplished writer, and it kind of, she She was prominent in different locations of Los Angeles, Venice Beach, Hollywood, and Watts as well. And Ixing Cervenka, of course, is the lead singer of X. They recorded this album at McCabe's guitar shop, and it was a massive album, again, a double feature, and it featured Coleman on one side, side A, and Cervenka on side B. And so the artwork of the record, this was printed on vinyl, it has Coleman on one side and Cervenka on the other. So the concept of naming it Twin Sisters was really this idea of being ironic about both of these women's significance to the landscape of LA. But it didn't really get much attention, and it was quickly forgotten, which is why I wanted to highlight it here, especially because Wanda Coleman was, as I mentioned earlier, a prolific writer and really a pioneer for LA spoken word and LA literature in general, so I really wanted to give her a shout out. Okay, and lastly here, so with these records, Kubernetes created a community of alternative poets. So I like that this article here says alternative poets because the 90s were all about alternative, right? Alternative way of living, alternative music. And so it only makes sense that alternative literature would be happening at the same time. But I'm curious, and the point of this presentation here today is what happened after the Kubernetes years? How did the spoken words evolve? And what happened when a new generation came forward? And with that, transitions.
Thank you, Steve, for setting us up. And now it's the fun part of the Q&A, which you'll get to lead. Oh, well, shall we do the reading? Yes. Okay, perfect.
Me?
Yes.
I imagine this at the end, but that's okay, hi. So after that, I don't know, let me just, so I would not be here if it wasn't for Marisa. I will advance. I walked into a poetry reading at Self-Help Graphics and saw her and instantly knew what I was meant to do. And it was to write. And I'm sure it'll come out in the conversation, but you were my inspiration and my favorite writer. That was great. She wants me to tell the story. So,
Set it up. Can I set it up? Please set it up. It was a reading at Self-Help Graphics. I think the entrance was $4 or $3. Two here. Jose Montoya, Luis Alfaro, Naomi Quiñones, and myself. Back then, there was no internet. There wasn't this, you can come to my thing, nada. You made a flyer. You cut and paste the letters like a ransom note, and then you put those flyers anywhere you could back then, okay? So you never knew who was going to show up. That night it was so, I mean, it was like,
that was a night of 1,000 stars.
it was. Everybody was there. From Culture Clash to everybody was there. Okay. Luis Alfaro, go ahead.
So I was at East LA College and I was beginning my career as a Chicana activist and grassroots organizer, and I was organizing events on campus, and somebody hands me that flyer and it's like a ransom note, exactly what you said. And my friend Kathy was like, I have a card, let's go. And I was like, sure. Will it be boys? Yes, let's go. So, you know, and so I was 19, 20, and I walk in and we grab a seat, and out comes Luis Alfaro. Do you guys know Luis Alfaro, right?
Yeah.
Professor.
He's a professor here.
Amazing. And so he comes out in a white slip dress and starts banging on his chest saying, where are my heroes? Where are my saints? Where are my heroes? Where are my saints? I was with my people. And then this one, I'll never forget your outfit. You were wearing like a lace skirt, and you had a necklace that said 976 Loca on it.
Yes.
And after her poem, she has a poem, from Peace, a poem, by the same title. And it changed my life. That moment was formative for me. And I honestly didn't know that you could write poems about humor. Like, I didn't know that you could write poems about the bus, or the señoras, and that you see on the street every day. But so I went on and I wrote several things. But the poem that I chose to read today is a little bit of a time capsule. It became a crowd favorite, like my greatest hits, and a greatest hit. And I think I'm going to stand for it. And I think this crowd, I was like, ooh, will they get the annotations? I think this crowd is. So I hope you enjoy it. And it's called "Where Am I in Those Cool Levi Commercials?" I haven't thought of it. Take the mic. I'll take the mic. Hi. Okay. So, when these lentes. Shoot.
We're at that age.
We're at that age. I did print at font 14, but I am sorry. Maybe I'll do it without. Where was it? Hello. Oh, they're at the bottom of the page. Okay.
Sitting at home watching the dictator tell me how I should look or not look this week, how skinny I should be, or how much my skin is not quite that white or quite not that brown. They got me watching an Asian guy on a Levi's commercial. So where does that leave me? Where am I in those cool Levi commercials? What, don't I wear Levi's? Don't the ones who fall in between count? Have they not been to the Montebello Town Center? The Levi's Gap T-shirt capital of Madison Avenue? Or don't they know that we're beautiful too? The kings and queens of style, have they not been to Peppers? Have they not seen me wear my favorite pair of Levi's mixed and matched from grunge to Brenda on 90210? Don't they know that I have MTV? I watch House of Style with Cindy Crawford, who is the closest thing that I got on TV that looks like me. Come on, Cindy, admit it. You're Latina. You have to be. How else can you look like a combination cha-cha-chola sometimes? Come on, Cindy. I discovered your secret. And for reference, here we go. I brought this from the 90s. So if La Cindy can be on TV, why can't I be on a Levi's commercial? What look you want, guys? I have the Janet Jackson indigenous choker vest combo mastered long before she did. So what are you afraid of? I won't sell your Levi's? If we're good enough to make them, and we're good enough to wear them, why are we not good enough to be in your commercials? You're an American institution. Whatever happened to the melting pot? I can be a loose interpretation of the original. Being I'm not quite white, I'm not quite brown, makes me loosely based on what I don't see. Me. And for reference, I'll pass it around. This is Cindy looking like, this is
Cindy?
like, what year? Well, her 95. She was promoting Raisin Rage. Ragin Raisin was the name of the color. All Latinas wear. That's our color, right? And it keeps on happening. What's yours? Lovable. Okay.
You want me to read something? Should we? Or should we?
Oh, we should talk.
I think we should talk.
Yeah, so I wrote a couple of things down that you were saying, because I was like, grunge and then 90210, that I love that imagery so much, because again, these are things that are usually not associated with brown people. I used to get that a lot when I was in high school. You like rock music? What do you mean? Yes, of course. So yeah, besides you not seeing yourself on TV, what was the inspiration, or how did you come up with these images that you wanted to include in your piece?
I think you hit the nail on the head. That so, without disparaging Chicanas of the time, right? There was definitely a divide. I felt like if you didn't look a certain way, you weren't accepted as a Chicana Latina poet at the time. And so notice that I mentioned Maricela's outfit, right? She wasn't wearing a rebozo or the embroidered top, right? You know, or it didn't look like Frida Kahlo, you know, that started back then. And so my voice as a Mexican American was not heard. It's still not heard. You know, where are we in those Cool Levi commercials still applies to today, you know? And so, I did want to say something. But I also felt that I love my community. And Peppers at the time was a nightclub. Like I noticed that when we asked about the 90s, right? Somebody said Arena, somebody said Florentine Gardens. My club was Jolt, you know, at the Variety Arts Center in downtown. Yeah, my brother-in-law Joe Heaven was the promoter. And it's just the Montebello Town Center, these new American concepts, right? We went to the mall and did what other Americans did. We are still not in those Cool Levi commercials. We buy them, we make them, we're not represented. And I don't know if I did that on purpose, maybe, I don't remember at the time. But, so opening this up in a magazine and seeing her with the lap straw, I'm like, come on, I mean, seriously, like, and they're still doing, Hailey Bieber's doing this now, right? She's doing the Latina makeup, you know, the brown, so we're still being leapfrogged. Society's very good at taking our imagery and our looks and taking it for themselves. I'm not sure if you answered your question.
You did.
Yeah.
You did. Thank you. No, that's a really good point in pointing out just how, you know, cultural appropriation happens and how it's really a lack of credit, giving credit where it is due and where these images come from. And so you mentioned that the outfit. So I love that this is something that we both noticed right away, right? Which is the look. And so Maricela, do you want to talk a little bit about why you chose not to don the typical Chicana indigenous garb and instead went with the black suit?
Well, okay, I'll tell you the story of that black suit. I was with Danielle Villarreal, who you might know as Little Puppet from American Me. And we were hanging out downtown and we were walking down 7th Street, and in the window, this is long before Jackie Brown, in the window of Robinson's was this black suit. And I walked in and I said, I'll take it. You know, of course, Tarantino didn't know he stole that from me when Jackie Brown buys that suit, right? And I just thought, it feels comfortable. Everything else, that other stuff, it didn't feel comfortable. That's not who I am. You know, I think it's also, like you said, you pointed out with Anouk and Monica Vitti, I grew up watching films, and I still watch the same films all the time, because to me, that beauty and that look is timeless. You can't say, oh, that's from the 60s. It could be last week, right? So to me, basic black was the way to go. Yeah, little has changed. The hair's gotten grayer, but little has changed in that respect of style. And, you know, it was met with good and bad, which reminds me of a reading I did at the Women's Building in the 80s. And like I said, back then you sent flyers out, people called you on the phone, on the landline to invite you to participate in an event. And I was invited to do a gig at the Women's Building, which was in downtown LA on Spring Street. And I worked with a drummer. I worked with 2 percussionists, Billy Loya and Daryl Aguilera. Daryl was like the last of the old beatniks. And he played a lot of gigs, different bands. He toured with Anita O'Day. You know, there was a history there with Daryl. And he's the one, I'd say, Daryl, look, I just wrote this. He was the brother of the owner of the restaurant where I worked. And I was reading it to him, and all of a sudden he starts doing this thing. He goes, you got a real rhythm going on. I do. Vincent, I didn't know this, right? He starts doing this. I said, Daryl, I want you for my next gig. And so here we go to the Women's Building. Here I come with Daryl and his congas, and they freaked out. Oh man, you know, it really rubbed a lot of those women the wrong way. I'm sorry, it did it. But there's a woman that contacted me on Facebook, and she was there at that gig. She goes, "I'll never forget her reading." I said, "Thank you so much." This is the first thing you did. You got up on the podium and you said, "Open your songbooks to page 22." And everybody just shut up. And then he started playing, and that was it. Nobody took pictures. Nobody videotaped it. No. You were there to listen. You know? I appreciate the photos and the documentation, but at the same time, you're there to listen. And that's what they did back then. Did I answer I don't think I answered your question. Why did I choose that? It was easy. Take it to the dry cleaners, ready for the next gig. Put the suit on, you're there.
Yeah, no, you definitely did. I think highlighting that there was changes happening, right?
Yeah.
There was changes happening to how Chicanas viewed themselves and wanting. There's a great quote from Gronk that I used in my thesis that, like, you know, he had B movies and Daffy Duck, and that it was something much more contemporary that they were taking from. And you know, that really resonated with me, kind of coming from, by the 1990s, there was an influx of immigrants from Latin America, and so I'm a product of that. And so, of course, I didn't know the term Chicano until I went, or Chicana or Chicana, until I went to college. And these images were so beautiful, but I just, and I know that I have indigenous ancestry, but I don't really know too much about it, and so it always kind of felt a little bit like, this feels right, but kind of like I'm wearing a costume a little bit, and I like it, but I don't know kind of what my relationship is to it. I feel like I haven't learned enough, and that was really stood out to me about your work, that it showed, oh, well, you can kind of you can like all of these different things and incorporate all of these different things, and that still makes you enough as you are. And I think that a lot of that imposter syndrome came from that for me. Just kind of like, where do I belong, and kind of where do I have to take from one culture specifically or the other? And there's no real need for that. And that's what I really like, that it's this exchange, understanding that it's an exchange between these two cultures, as opposed to saying that it's one all the time or the other all the time, or that it's both at the same time. It's an exchange.
And it's interesting, I've talked to other young scholars that are always marrying me to punk rock, you know, and I did go to some shows. I read with Ixine, you know, many times, and I was also at other places, you know. I didn't want to just stay ever and just eating the same thing all the time, right? So we would go to this an Argentine restaurant that was on Melrose called Las Brujas. I don't know if we were high or what it was, but we walked in, it was pale lavender walls, and there were people doing the tango, seriously doing the tango. But everything was just a little slightly off, and I think it's because it was upstairs, they could find this pretty, I mean, why did we think we could go there? We just did. Right. Or going to La Plaza on La Brea to see a drag show. Before RuPaul, before all of this, it was, you know, somebody doing a Rocío Dúrcal song in a beautiful gown, and we had just finished waiting tables, so you took your tip money to give it to that performer to say thank you. It was Berlin in the 30s. No, it was West Hollywood in the 70s, right? Or the 80s. So no, never just one thing. But I agree with you, it did feel like I would be putting on a costume. I got a little blurb in Elle magazine. So there I go to the photo shoot, and they're bringing clothes, and they're doing all this. And this woman starts braiding my hair. Oh, yeah, right away, me puso un trapo, and I'm like, I should have brought that magazine. I have it for you. I ended up wearing a black suit, and some blue-side bracelets, but right away they started doing that.
You said it was for Elle magazine?
Yeah,
We do have that.
it's somewhere in there.
Somewhere.
But anyway. Oh,
Well, just all of that, I really want to show.
yeah, go ahead.
I really want to show the image.
Oh, go back to that one.
Oh, you want me to?
Yeah. Okay, here's the thing. So you get invited to do a reading either at a coffee house or, you know, a university, And sometimes that shop there is in Taos, New Mexico, before Taos became as precious as it is now. And we went and I read out in front of a Sears building that was being demolished, and Gronk had done some stuff there with paper. And people were just kind of out and about, and you did it on the sidewalk. Why not? You're 26, you're not afraid, that's the other thing.
And that also points to the temporary spaces that were existing at that time. Establishments were running out of money, and literature in particular was running out of money, or they had no money. And so temporary spaces like this were kind of normal. McCabe's, as I mentioned earlier, where Twin Sisters were recorded, that was a space that was multi-function. Thank you for that. Let me try to get.
That's another cut and paste job. Cut and paste. There it is.
Yep, here on the, it would be the right side.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where's the Rolling Stones? She was one of Rolling Stones 100 Women in Rock.
Yes. And see, and then that silver button was from a show I saw at the Whiskey of Go-Go. And it was a band called Silverhead, and they had a song called 16 and Savage. I still have it. And Viva, of course, we loved the look of Viva of the 70s from London. The dark lipstick, the no eyebrows. Very awesome. Very Patsy.
Yes, that's exactly what I was thinking of.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The Rolling Stone, I did not actually include that, but I do have, it was a solo feature, and then you were featured among other women of poetry. So it was like women in rock, but they had a subsection for women in spoken word and poetry. And I will say this, that even though you were featured, it was like a blimp. And I found it really ironic. Like, you're talking about women who are already outlaws or outcasts, right? Because they're poets. Mm-hmm. And then the one who is like the outcast among outcasts, it features this much in the article. That was really disappointing. There was a huge spread, and it's like, definitely there is a lot of credit that should be given to many of the women that were part of the scene, but it just kind of points out, like, again, whose history do we document, whose do we focus on, and who is worthy of being like the highlight, or the one that gets the 2-page spread, right? So yeah, I wanted to highlight that. Do you want to do it?
Sure. I thought we should just keep talking.
Okay.
Oh,
I know, perdón, I couldn't grab it. But I keep wanting to look at these photos.
No, these are-
In a way, it's sort of like being at your own funeral, and I mean that in the best way possible. Don't get all uncomfortable. I mean that in the best way
There's
possible.
that sense of humor. That's that Emily Dickinson dark humor.
Because the play that I wrote called Éxito was about a woman, and she's at her own funeral. So in a way, this feels like that, but it's good. It's not a bad thing. Everybody's like,
But when you said I can decide the time for you to show us, and then we can keep telling.
okay.
And if you want to tell us what you'll be reading, tell us.
Sure.
Give us the
Sure.
concept, set it up. And
Yes. So I was invited,
And let
oh, my West transfer.
yes.
It's all, and who's gonna keep all this? I was thinking about that. I was looking at, and why do I still check books out at the library? Si tengo un montón de libros at home. You don't, it's all free now. So anyway, I was invited, yeah, this is the transfer. 25 cents, that's long gone. I was invited to contribute something for a book that was coming out to celebrate Union Station. And Union Station, of course, is, before you could go and sit in those nice, comfortable chairs, you can't do that anymore. Unless you have a ticket to go somewhere, you just can't sit there to read a newspaper or do a crossword puzzle or whatever. They get you out. So it's a place that is childhood. Talk about memory. It's my mom and my aunt. I remember us taking the train to see a friend of ours in the OC, and my mom and my aunt just linked arms, like they did in the 40s, like girls friends walking in the 40s with their arms linked, and they're looking at this gorgeous station, and my aunt turns to my mom and she says, "Do you remember the soldiers?" Because they would see soldiers either leaving or coming home. And I just remember catching that out the side of my ear and like, ooh, I'm taking that one with me. But anyway, this is a piece about Union Station. You don't need me on the mic, right? Am I loud enough? Can you guys hear me? Mic wouldn't be bad?
Yeah.
And I have to say, it's been a while since I've done this. If you ever get lost, she told us once, just get yourself to Union Station and you'll know how to get home. Find a calendar, put on a blindfold, and pick a year. Any year, and there will always be a picture of me standing alone inside of Union Station. In 1982, I stood poised and camera ready. My picture taken before crisscrossing sidewalks that led to Chinatown, Madame Wong's, Flora's, nightcaps at Yinilu, and always a shortcut chaser through Olvera Street before making my way back to Union Station. Dropping dimes inside the dark wooden booths, heavy with conversation. If this grand station was a sacred place, then these rows of public telephones were the city's confessionals. Inside, I waited for answers, a ride home, waiting. Every morning, I wait for the light to change my mind. Every morning, it is never the same. The numbers change like the exchange rates on romance, survival, and a cup of coffee. I steady myself as if I were driving or already on a moving train going somewhere outside of this self. Just one of thousands of extras, all of us the supporting players in this, the ultimate magical reality show. The Los Angeles Public Transit story, where we have been cast as strangers on the same train of thought inside Union Station. Everyone, all of us, are going somewhere while standing perfectly still. We wait for a train, a seat, the hooded, the button down, the skateboard, the briefcase, the generic plastic bag carried by all of us, holding some extension of our other self as we move through Union Station, my favorite freeway in the city of Los Angeles. If you ever get lost, her voice trails off. A girl in a green t-shirt and a pair of black Converse sneakers is hunched over a textbook instead of a cell phone. Those same sneakers I wore as a child, pretending I was William Holden, running up and down the long corridors of Union Station, a victim of the Late Late Show. These same corridors, the polished footsteps, are my stage left. And today, Union Station becomes the knot in the throat of Los Angeles, where we, in the thousands, walk past, in between, over, way out, and under. Invisibly, we go hand in hand, silently knitting words, breaking the language barrier on a slow-moving train, searching for artifacts from 1959, 1978, 1982, and next year. Each morning, I see an orange rind left at the foot of the steps of Union Station. The orange rind has begun to curl in the Los Angeles sunshine, like the red cellophane fortune-telling fish we bought as kids on surprise trips to Chinatown. It curls a little to the left, as if to say, yes, you will make your train. Good bus karma is yours today. If you ever get lost. Walking through this vast station movie backdrop, I'm a 70s cop show extra. I'm the woman on the red line wearing all three of the Supremes wigs at the same time. I'm the one you want to sit next to. I promise. I ask myself, what year will it be today? Take the blindfold off and tell us, where are you going? And who were you wearing on that night of the midnight railway mass? Memory reflected inside the abandoned telephone booth where the portraits hang, down the long, shiny corridor where your voices speak. Cool California tiles soothe your sore throat, Los Angeles. A full moon is waiting in the empty seat next to you. Every day, I count 100 faces to keep my balance. I make room for a birthday cake from Clifton's, the sound of a train whistle signaling Union Station. Adjusting the narrative's hemline, I take my place alongside the extras, all of us poised and camera ready. Finally, there is movement. The crisscrossing from purple to red line, from Inland Empire to Central Valley, and back inside Union Station, where I steady myself and prepare the imaginary questionnaire, mark the area code switch, forever armed with a pocket full of dimes, so I can keep talking to you, Los Angeles. It is your fragile geography I carry in a see-through bag since 1955, listening for the sound of your voice reminding me that if I ever get lost, in private and on paper, this is how I walk. This is how I wander. The only way to really know Los Angeles is by counting footsteps, I say. Sometimes I tell myself I am traveling.
Take it in, yeah. Letting that
And I still do not drive by choice. And back then, to get to a gig, you had to buy somebody a skate or, do something to get to the reading and to get home. More importantly, to get home. Because, there was no Uber, there was no Lyft. So you always kept dimes to make the SOS, right?
Yeah, that was great. And this is a poem I was not familiar with, so this was a new one for me. Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot to take in, but I love it. It's definitely, again, a feeling. It's a feeling and a familiarity there. And this poem reminded me a lot of Wanda Coleman. And Wanda Coleman did have, she had a poem or a prose piece, I can't remember correctly, that talked about that LA was always changing on her. And that's kind of the reality of what it's like to be an LA native, that LA is constantly changing around you. So with that, I do want to ask you both about where you find inspiration for your writing. Clearly Los Angeles, and clearly media and stuff that you gravitate towards. But yes, where do you find inspiration for your work, and who and what inspires you specifically?
Well, you all know, Maristela Norte inspires me. Consuelo. The women around me inspired me, which I surrounded in the early 90s. My mom was, was an inspiration. But I feel like I wrote this to you, when I was pondering this. I had not, until I got to East LA College and my first, the teacher, everybody has the teacher. My teacher was Carol Lim. She introduced me to Chicano authors. And up until I was 18, I had never read a Chicano author in my life. I mean, how is that possible, guys? It's criminal. So that's where I find my inspiration in the asinine, right? In just in filling these holes, right? That need to be filled in our society, and they still need to be. I'm just going to let Patty talk because I want to hear you talk.
And just to connect dots even more, Carol Lim was my teacher also. Back in the 70s, I took my first writing class, and she was just, but ascended Carol Lim. She was just a powerhouse. She's about this big, teeny, with her little bowl haircut, her glasses, and she'd look at your, at your work and just more. more? Question mark. What about, you know, and she really paid attention. She was just a force, you know. And to connect the dot to Wanda, after Wanda had passed, I think it was the anniversary of Wanda's passing, my dear friend Linnell George and I took a drive to Venice to say hi to her hairdresser and to go to Beyond Baroque and tip our hats to Wanda. And I found in the used book section, Carol Lim's book of poetry. So that to me kind of just the bow on it, you know, on that special day. But, you know, things have changed as far as those beautiful random conversations I used to have with people on the bus. Ya no, todo el mundo está FaceTiming and laughing at reels, and nobody is talking to each other. And I blame COVID, yes, from that, because everybody was afraid, you know. You get on the bus and people would look at you like, don't sit next to me, do not sit next to me. Like, they would just put the mask, their eyes are saying, don't even think about sitting here. So when somebody does open up or makes a comment, I'm waiting for the bus, an older man comes up to me and says, perdón, ¿te puedo decir algo? And I'm like, oh God, I have lipstick on my nose. What? He goes, se le ven muy bonitas sus canitas. He said, I like my gray hair. But the way he used diminutive, not canas, canitas, it just made it more, very, very, very sweet. Or you're waiting with a lady and she's like, oh, I have creams for sale, and opens up her bag. I cherish those moments. I cherish those moments. But I actually, I think I'm moving more towards a visual language now, because ever since I learned how to use my phone, my camera on my phone, I've been taking a lot of pictures. This picture that is on the cover of the book, I was waiting for the bus on Brooklyn and Soto, and I see this red dress and this yellow fire hydrant, and I just like pick the phone out, you click, click, click. He was not taking a picture of the lady's face, and the daughter standing next to her sees me, and she tells me, "Who's taking a picture?" Like, she leans over, and the lady turns around, and all of a sudden she stands up straighter. And I said, Senora, it's just your dress. It's so beautiful. The light was perfect, magic hour, all of that stuff. And the lady kind of stands up and she turns to the daughter and smacks her on the arm and goes, she likes my dress. Because you know the daughter was cringing, like, Mom, are you going to wear that red dress? With the gold chanclas? Are you kidding me? And I found out who she was. She owned a flower shop on Brooklyn. So when the book came out, I went to give her a copy of it and to thank her really, because it's those moments, you know, and it's always, again, there's movies. It's all about light, you know, it's all about the lighting and just being there at the right moment, and there it was.
Very cinematic.
It is.
That poem you read is like a film, right? Like you were listening to a film.
Well, the reference to William Holden is there's a movie called Union Station. Yeah. So it was a cross between feeling like him or like Edwin O'Brien, who thinks he has bubonic plague, and he's downtown and he's freaking out. Have you ever seen DOA?
No.
Yeah. The original, not the remake.
But just to add on to, so my kids are always like, Mom, why do you talk to everybody at restaurants? Why do you talk to everybody? And I have conversations and they're like, that's a Laura moment. That only what happened to you at the doctor's office. But I think I learned that from Maricela, like hanging out with her when we first met. You talk to everybody. The connections are very important to you.
They are.
Right? And that's your
Because
inspiration.
to get me out here to do, nobody's seen. I posted a picture of myself because I attended this beautiful event at the Vincent Price Museum last weekend to honor our dear friend Teddy Sandoval. It was the closing day for his exhibition. And of course, everybody saw me, was like, I go, I'm not a go, you know, because I don't go to those things. I don't go out because I'm frightened half the time, because I'm frightened that, you know, I might see somebody I don't want to see, somebody I don't want to say hello to, or it's not about being at the, it's not about being there. It's about taking a picture of yourself next to the artwork. not about looking at the artwork. It just makes me so angry. I go, ¿para qué voy a andar ahí de amargada? You know, I don't want to go with my big, ugly, mad face, you know? So I'm very selective about where I go, and I like being a recluse, honestly. I enjoy it. I mean, I love seeing my family and friends, of course, but I don't have to be at everything anymore. In your 20s, you went to everything. Everything. I estaba, so you're like a salero on the table. Right? You're there. But now, all you have to do is scroll through the feed and you'll see the same people at the same, I just can't. It's not for me.
Speaking of that, and
Not for me.
you know, as a moderator here, I wanted to bring to ask you about that. You know, like the difference between this moment and those 3 decades ago, the 90s, yes. Walk us through, like the good and you know, like the parts and all. You know, what was it like? You know, that spoken word scene of the 90s, and both of us, especially since Cecilia has been, I mean, like has so eloquently written about it. And for me, it's like we're living about like how did that actually happen? So, yeah, so tell us about it, and also just kind of the everyday, because both of you captured the everyday so well. And so tell us about the scene, and also tell us what was it like that day of the reading like?
I mean, a lot of it, like I said, it happened by chance. Like your friend showed you that flyer. Otherwise, how would you have found out? There's no way, I don't know how you would have found out about these things. There were places, there was a place downtown called Gorky's. It was a 24-hour Russian cafeteria where Fred Tomaselli, wonderful Fred Tomaselli, was the cashier. He was constantly throwing people out, and it was just a thing. You could go there, they wouldn't kick you out. If you nursed the same cup of coffee for 3 hours, they would not kick you out. It was like a clubhouse, right? And that's where you heard. It was spoken. It was, you know, or called you, but there was no email, there was no Instagram, there was no Facebook, there was no internet, there was no dark web. So you just told people, talked to people, and hey, have you heard so-and-so? Yeah, I ran into so-and-so, yeah, they're doing a gig, and oh yeah, when? Okay, boom, boom, boom. And you got there, and you went, right? And, you know, the preparation, of course, you know, you wanted your friends to go, but I can remember many readings and reading to chairs. And those 3 faithful friends that always showed up to support you that yeah. There were times when nobody showed up. It was just random. You just went with it. Again, you're in your 20s. Honestly, I didn't know what I was doing. There was a small ad in the LA Reader, which was like the LA Weekly, and it said Latino Writers Workshop, Spring Street. So I'm begging my father, can you give me a ride? ¿Qué vas a ir a Skid Row? No, hombre, not on your life. I'm not taking you there. Please, you have to take me. I need a ride. He said yes. And so I go into this building, and Luis Rodriguez is leading the workshop. And who's in the audience? Who's in the workshop? Elena Viramontes, Manasar Gamboa, Victor Ryan, I think Naomi Quinones was there. And I had 3 little poems to share with them. And Luis says, where have you been? How come we don't know about you? And I'm like, because I'm too scared to show anybody, you know, I don't know what I'm doing. So that led to a reading at Self-Help Graphics, which was the first reading I did with Gary Soto. Again, not knowing and being young enough to just go for it, right? So, and there was a time when I took myself out of the spoken word scene because I felt it was too crowded and I didn't have anything new or interesting to say. So why go up there and read the same stuff? Do you see what I mean? I just consciously stepped aside. You know, you could go hear Justine Bateman read her poetry.
Oh, that's right. You know, the
Remember
actress
when
Justine Bateman?
that was in the 80s or 90s, like Judd Nelson, like Breakfast Club, those
That sounds vaguely familiar. I feel like
yeah, they would read at Cafe Largo, which was on Fairfax.
Yeah. So the scene kind of changed.
It changed. It was too much, and I just thought I don't need to be there. I consciously stepped aside.
That's interesting. interesting. I feel like that kind of mirrors what I was saying about the Kubernetes records, the first three. They're expansive at showing the vastness of what spoken word was in LA at the time, but it's also a lot. It's like it's congested freeways.
Yeah.
I mean, quite literally, freeway records, right? It's a lot to take in. So I kind of see kind of where you're coming from there. So shifting the focus a little bit, I want to talk about what happened like after the Kubernetes year. So I added this photo here of both of you for the event that you did at East LA College. So do you want to share the story behind this photograph and the reading that you did together?
So I'm gonna start
Go
because
ahead.
exactly what you just said, like I had Marisela heard me read my poetry somehow and was like, hi,
I think it was on Illegal Interns, is where I first heard you.
My husband
Yeah,
Flavio.
yeah, I think it was on Illegal Interns I heard you, and I said, oh, who's this girl? And then I learned that you were gonna be at Troy, and I was friends with Sean, so I took the 68 to the corner of First and Alameda, and
for doing that.
I hear you.
And it was so I felt so supported. Like I was like you with the Navidad Montes and Luis
Right.
Rodriguez, yeah, you know, and there was no haters. Like everybody was
Yes.
so supportive of each other and uplifted each other. And I just, Marisela saw me and was like, I want you to open for me, you know, like come. And she organized this reading at Bean's Coffee House in Whittier. And she hired the photographer to take that was like my first professional photo. And we were like, what's his name? And
Willie Garcia.
Willie Garcia, he wore a little fedora. And we had a full photo shoot. And I remember putting up the flyer. I mean, there was like text that she like went to Kinko's and put on top of. And I remember every time I put it up, somebody tore it down.
That's great.
Yeah,
That's
they
great
kept
compliment.
taking it. They
Yes.
kept, like, you know, it's expensive to print. You know. I don't remember the reading exactly. Do you remember the reading?
Oh my God. I just remember it was a coffee house in Uptown Whittier, and not much more of that.
Yes.
To tell you the truth.
It was just like you sparked, like from there, it was like a spiral, like Marisela gave me validity, she gave me the blessing.
That was the year of your adoption.
Yeah, she called me daughter from that moment on. Yes, and from there, like going back to what Jorge was saying, like the days of to what you're both saying, like who told me that I could go on you know, and at the Legal Interns television program, get public access, and then from there, you know, I do my work with East LA Taiko, you know, was a Taiko group, or at La Regeneración, which was an art collective in Highland Park with Zach La Rocha from Rage Against the Machine's art space.
Yeah.
He, you know, this is an open space, and Ella Consuelo was there for many of the readings, and it was very womanist, very feminist. It was all women coming together, and we'd have these amazing meetings, and you were excited to present your work. I honestly don't even know what I presented at these things. I just know that I was there in collaboration with other artists.
But you felt supported.
Supported and brave, I guess. I just felt like I could do it. No one was there to tell you you can't do it.
Yeah, I guess if there was a rule book, we didn't know about it. You know.
Right, we didn't have a rule book.
None.
It was a great time in my life. It was amazing. And yeah, I don't know. Oh, about that reading at Finn's Coffee House. And so, you know,
And
that
people showed up. People showed up.
did,
Yeah.
and there was a thirst and an audience for it. And, you know, I was thinking in terms of the PopCon, you know, and what we're doing here, like, oh, it's a music conference, but at every, I don't know if you saw there was a flyer that I sent you guys. It was like Dia de los Muertos event, right? It was like all the Quetzal, Olin, all of them, and they would mix in poets.
Yes.
Poets spoken word artists were considered,
Like one of the bands.
Yeah.
Like a band or something.
we
Yeah.
were there as important. We, you know, everything except for, I mean, Mari had instruments, sometimes I had instruments. And we were very well respected and sought after at that time.
There was a reading in Boyle Heights is on the steps of the Japanese American National Museum. A lot of the bands that you mentioned were there. And I read something, and as I'm coming down the steps, this young man comes up to me and goes, Marcella, and I said, yes. He goes, I just want to tell you that first time I heard you read, my mom took me. And I was 11 or 12 years old, and I was kind of like, oh. But I went, and it was to hear Wanda Coleman and I were on a word tour, and we were hitting all these different places every night of the week, and we were in Long Beach in a basement. And I thought the fire marshal was going to shut this thing down because it was so crowded, and David Gomez was there. And it was just so like, wow, you were 12 and you were there, and now you're this man standing in front of me. So you never know. You just never know.
I'll do one question because Cecilia has so many great ones.
Oh.
Speaking about those like these crossroads that LA was at the time, we keep talking about Chancarillo. I want you to tell us about who Chancarillo is, his family. I mean, and also how that reflects that crossroads of Los Angeles at the time.
Wow. Well, I have a lot of Sean stories. His sister's here. You tell me if I'm wrong, so I will. But I think I met Sean. Sean was the best dressed man with 2 cents in his pocket. And somehow you would hang out with him. At the end of the night, he was at the Pacific Dining Car eating a steak. I don't know how he did it, but his charm, I met him, I think it was at his paper fashion show that he did at Cal State LA, where Toulouse was one of the models. And he was in a tuxedo. He said, if you're gonna do it, do it right. He was in a tuxedo. The LA Times covered it. We were so excited. And we became friends. We just became pals. And Sean did a lot of things. He did photography. He did a lot of things. He still does. And that was our friendship started in the 80s. And then when he founded Troy, which is the cafe in Little Tokyo, that was just, it became a bigger family then.
He and Vivi did it.
He and Vivi,
His wife.
we're Sean fans.
We're
so.
Sean fans. I think you're right. Vivi, he is Beck's mother.
Vivi Hansen.
Vivi Hansen is an artist, and her son is an artist as well.
Both of them. Her sons, both of them.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's right.
Shannon. Yeah, he's
I
a
forgot about
weaver.
that.
And you have a very interesting story about Beck. I mean,
I always say I was Beck's babysitter, but, we had a really nice little friendship. He was a young man as a kid. He would write me letters. I have a lot of his letters. And this beautiful play he wrote about this island where there were just penguins on this play, and on this island, right? And in fact, he invited Wanda and I to, I think it was his 30th birthday, in some convent up in Los Feliz. I'm trying to remember. Yeah, but that's the last time I saw him. Oh, he's a flaquito, and I hugged him, and I thought, oh, does he have his hand getting a little too close? It was my hand. This is so tiny. No, and Vivi, long time supporter. My Vivi Hansen story, and there's a photograph that I gave you of, I'm reading something, a poem, but I taped it inside a copy of Alarma. And Alarma is, I'm sure you know what Alarma is, it's this Mexican tabloid, which, specializes in, crimes of passion, a lot of explosions, a lot of beheadings, a lot of murder. I love it. Used to be able to buy it on Broadway when there were newsstands on Broadway, which are now gone. But for this particular reading, it was at the Geffen Contemporary, which used to be called the Temporary Contemporary in Little Tokyo. It was before they built MoCA in the 80s. And I did the reading on a flatbed truck with my friend Jimmy Capallo. And it was a good reading. The audience was into it. It was good reading. And I was coming down off the truck, and Vivi came up to me, and she gave me a big hug and a kiss. And she whispered in my ear, she said, Monty, don't let this be your best moment. And I was kind of like, a little bit kind of, wait a minute, what does she mean? That's odd, but it made so much sense. And I always remember that.
Don't let this be your best moment. Don't get comfortable. Keep going. Keep going. And be present and be mindful. Just
But so, I don't know if everyone knows, Troy Cafe at the time was such a hotbed for, a hotbed, I hate that word. It's a space, and I don't know if they opened it, I don't know if Tolu knows. It was intended to be that space, but there was a stage. There was a stage, and so that stage was always filled with the most amazing artists performing on it. I mean, you name it, they hit that stage.
yes.
And they were so welcoming. And without it, I don't know where a lot of Latino writers and artists would be. I mean, you name it, they all played the tiny, like the size of this table.
That was the stage,
The stage
yeah.
on that corner.
Then it had the backyard patio, and
Yeah.
you set up the mics, they made the coffee, and
Yeah.
people showed up, and people went, you know, or you would go there after a gig, you'd go to Troy.
It was formative for a lot of
How
artists.
many years, Tolu, did it run?
From about 90 to 95.
Okay.
Oh, boy, let's do it. My voice.
It's now a subway station.
And just get the mic closer to the.
So The Stage Is Yours is an event put on by the Illegal Interns, where they named the Illegal Interns, again, the television program at the time, out of Whatevision Cable in East LA. And Sean opened his doors to them, and Flavio, that night, was it, who else performed at the Stage Is Yours?
Can everyone hear?
Okay, we're gonna try this.
This is called Route 16. It's all for people don't have to go to the police to see violence. Teenage mothers, athlete gangsters, hardcore gangsters, abandoned grandmothers, neglected children. Where are they going? Destination unknown. Kids screaming in the property off their own car with air conditioning and running dirt. Blink, on and on they go. They have any special help that should have their own route. Roll for service on the right, unidentified on the left. Blink, mend it, next up. Pregnant mothers with kids at each side. Working mothers who don't know where the kids play at night. No te preocupes, no old woman. No se preocupe, señor. Aquí vamos a tener children. Because language barriers are their only flaw. Racial tension is all I saw. Chinese, Japanese, Black, Mexican, Latino. Inferiority, fear, ignorance in their eyes. Sitting side by side, not a word uttered as they move aside to make room for the next pretty girl inside. They check her out as she bows her eyes and avoids saying in. Move aside to check out her red eyes. The same man, quite disappointed, and I'm now looking at my behind as I get up and walk to the door, push my way through, and finally get outside. $10, can you get on it? Not 68, or shall I say, I'm perhaps not Chuck, is your ticket to entertainment? With more lines, no 750, no actors, no directors, no scripts, no sellout, just like.
Oh, look at babies.
She just said my dress was so short.
Great. That's great. Thank you. So tell me a little bit about, you said that you, after you saw the information that's when you wrote this poem. So can you tell me a little bit more about the poem and about the day that you did this performance?
A little blurred. But as you can see, my page is shaking. I was so, yeah, I was like, oh my God, I was so nervous. That was probably my first public, like very public, because Troy Cafe was tiny, but they filled that room with, I mean, every corner of that room was always filled with the most amazing people. I'll never forget, one time I read, another time, not, and I got off the stage and Sean was standing with the great Jose Montoya. And Jose Montoya could not have been kinder.
And Sean looks at Jose Montoya and says, I told you. You know, he had sang my praises to the Jose Montoya. I mean, it was, like I said, special, and I'm embarrassed of it right now a little bit. I don't know, I feel like, you know, my look and it just, but it was great at the time. It was, I was out there, and that's what I tell the students that are here, put yourself out there and let your voice be heard. Because like, I just want to say, like, people saw this on the illegal interns, right? That television, Mari saw me, and then Jorge saw me and was saying that he was inspired by it, and then I don't know that band La Santa Cecilia. Apparently, the lead singer, I'm the reason why she felt. She told me once, she's like, Laura, I saw you reading poetry, and I felt like my voice could be heard as well. So put yourself out there and let yourself be heard, and don't let anybody tell you. Right. It's just like
No filters.
no holes.
Yeah.
No salad. Yeah, just okay. Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
That's great. But I know what you mean when you see something of your youth. You know, of course, I posted one of these images on Facebook, and of course, the one payaso, is that you? No. It has the whole description of the conference. Is that you? Like,
I mean, what a shock.
what a shocker, right?
You
Yeah.
change
Then
over
you
the
would
years.
change.
Yeah,
You'd go
I
have
think it's
great-
called aging.
But I think like, you know, that's so internal. That's so internalized, and it's so personal, because I look at that and I don't see any.
At all.
And yeah, anything that's like, yeah, anything that you would point out. But that's just your perspective, right? And you reflecting on that. But I think that it's really cool that you had spaces like Trade Cafe that were for people of color to kind of go and present. And so it's interesting to see how that happened. So I guess I want to say, like, would you consider spaces like Trade Cafe a response to the lack of spaces specifically for Latinas at the time? Because from my understanding, there was a lack of spaces in East LA. So what was the response to the lack of spaces for Latinas to perform at the time?
What places were there in East LA besides South Graphics? I think that really is it.
So you would
Now
have
you
travel.
hear about, there's a garage in, where is it? Not Huntington Park, South Cape. Bell, thank you. Hey, Debbie. Yeah, in Bell. You know, so people are just taking it upon themselves to create these places, you know? Just like in El Monte, esta muchacha, eat the hand that feeds you. Yes, she started the space in El Monte.
But I think coffee houses started becoming, you know, popping up, and it was a coffee house and performance. It was always an and, right? Not a singular spot where you got to have a performance. In Boyle Heights, or East LA, I can't even name.
There was a place, what was it? It was a bookstore again on First Street, kind of in that area where,
The Libro Street?
no. It's, no, God, no. That's too new, no, this is too new. It was an older bookstore, and Susan Anderson, who's a historian, and a curator at the California African American Museum, she and I shared the mic there. The little bookstore that had a short life, but you would go and support it that way. You know, bringing your friends in, maybe they buy a book, you know, something. But honestly, I see little glimmers, and then I think, what is that over there? Who's moving out so they can move in? Brooklyn Avenue.
Yeah. There are spaces, but at the time, I mean, it was Troy and self-help.
Yeah.
And that's it.
And maybe you got a university gig. I mean, you got paid. But one, you know, that back then, you know, you did that little circuit, you know. We went to Mount Shasta, remember?
The College of the Siskiyou.
College of the Siskiyou in Weed, California.
Was that the name?
Yeah, it was Weed.
The name was Weed.
No, it's in the city of Weed.
City of Weed, there's a Weed, California, guys.
It's Humboldt County, well, you know, so yeah, but we went up. And it was, Professor Cantu that invited us to go up.
We drove 11 hours straight there. Yeah, so there was a thirst for it. I don't know, do universities have poetry readings to invite writers to your, is that a thing that is done now?
When I was in graduate school,
Yes,
yeah.
oh, good. I don't know, but it was very prominent. Like, I remember myself reading at I got many at like Chicano conferences. I was always reading and performing, you know, at Chicano conferences. I don't know if you include that in your conferences, but you should if you don't. There should always be a writer or poet at your conferences. It's very important.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, yes. When I went to graduate school, it was like, well, why go and get a master's in English literature? Well, for the love of writing.
Right.
I mean, I saw Dead Poet Society when I was in ninth grade, and Michael Keaton was such a inspiration to me. I mean, the great Robin Williams, when he passed away, I was devastated because I was going to college. He literally passed away the summer before I went to college. And that movie just really resonated with me, this idea that words and ideas can change the world. And I believe it. And I mean, this none of that would have happened, or I wouldn't be here if I hadn't seen that, and that was kind of the journey that I ended up taking.
See, you need the role models, you need the example.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. You need to be a Levi commercial.
And I think this is a good segue to start our reflections and questions. Yes, Michelle.
Oh, well, I'll let somebody go first. I just wanted to thank you all. Sorry, I just ran up the stairs. Yes. So thank you all. Yeah, that brings back so many memories, and I think what was so fun too to see all those pictures and to remember being a young person back in the day. Because I think I was in my 20s back then. But also, I think also part of the ecosystem were the scholars at the time, the young scholars like us in graduate school who were really trying hard to make the case that we could and should study and write about and honor all the things that you did at the moment, because it wasn't always easy, and I'm so happy that you're able to do it and you don't have to fight to do it, right? That is actually, like, this makes sense to do. So I think in thinking about the 90s, the piece, and especially since you're a young scholar, is to think about, yes, that it's musicians, painters, I mean, think about Diane, all the folks, right? Quetzal and all the bands. But many of those fans in the 90s were in grad school at the time. So there's something about the way that there was something in the water, something in the moment, and could have been a generational, I don't really know, but I'm thinking it was that same impulse of you just have to put yourself out there and do it, because this is never going to show up in the classroom, or professors are never going to sign it. And it had to be some of that kind of punk rock attitude, right, as well. And but so it's beautiful to see that the door is, that you're opening the door then for the next generation that's learning, right? Because none of us stays here forever, right? And so we have to make sure that we share the story. So however the story resonates with you, that's beautiful. Because for us, it resonated in a particular way, but times have changed. It's resonating in new ways. So just please continue telling the story and understand that you're part of a larger ecosystem of artists, thinkers, scholars, outcasts, like people who are never really seen as serious people that actually have a lot to say that is important. Since we're in the midst of a crisis, planetary crisis, right? What is it that we can learn from this moment as we move hopefully not to the dictatorship and like all the hard things that are coming that we're living right now, the pandemic, etc. But there's something about the power of poetry. Just hearing Maricela read. I mean, I haven't heard you read in person since my daughter was born. This is 20 years ago. Yeah. But there's something about the voice, breath. What is it? The moisture of the breath. I heard this incredible talk about poetry an indigenous way of thought, and that speaking sacred breath, right? That's sacred breath. It's your breath, just the moisture of the breath, and then we hear the vibration. So, I think, yeah, we can't forget this. We can't forget this scene, we can't forget this story, so I'll stop there. That done? Okay.
No, and I just want to acknowledge Michelle Hable-Bayan, who started writing about my work back in the day. And we met on a Sunday afternoon at the LA Theater Center, and I was there for the last performance of Luis Alfaro's Downtown. And I had not met him yet. This is before I invited him to do the reading. I hadn't met him yet. And I went because people said, oh my God, Luis Alfaro, if you were a gay man, you would be Luis Alfaro. I couldn't think of a bigger compliment, and they said to him, if you were a straight woman, you would be Marcela Norte, right? So it made sense, but now we have dinner at 6 o'clock at Sizzler in Montebello, okay? So this is how far we've come. But that's where Michelle and I met, and we just started chatting, and then we ended up in MacArthur Park to see that photography exhibit. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
You were kind enough to give me a ride. I remember you were so kind and you gave me a ride home.
Well, I was there to invite Luis, so this is the grad school thing. I was a MA student at UC San Diego, and I was there to, just long story, you know how LA is, my cousin knew Luis, they had gone to Catholic school together, or something like crazy like that. Anyways, wow. Went to the show with the intention, like I got $500 to invite Luis to San Diego. And then I met you, and then I said, why don't you come?
Yeah.
And then remember you came, and then I set it off. And so.
And he was late to Union Station. Do you remember?
Yes, yeah, I was home, exactly. And then you guys came, and then I ended up meeting my partner in life, the whole thing. So that's what I mean by the ecosystem. Like you may not feel like you're doing, like you're important in the artist you're writing about, and you're different, obviously, but it is important, right? Because there is a dialogue there. So, but yeah, I mean, I remember meeting you, and I think Luis said something like, "Oh yeah, you should invite Maricela," and I was like, "Okay,
yeah,
I'll do that."
And we stayed at Scary Denny's.
Yeah.
Not anybody. We stayed at this hotel that had the Scary Denny's where you had to pay for your meal after you ordered it, so you didn't run out on a check. It was in like downtown
San Diego. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm sure it. No, it was fine. Are you kidding? We loved it. We loved it. Ink for the pen. Are you kidding me?
Yeah. So that was 92. I can tell you. Actually, it was 90. It was 92. Yeah, it was 92.
Now, can you guys speak to the cross-section of social justice movement, the student movement that you supported and you were part of the legal life? Because we're at UCLA, so part of the movie setup, we fought for what became generational study.
Right. I was there right after me and Richard.
At a time where Mother Evan, Charles Young said Chicano studies was not scholarly and worth studying. And so we have to leave the white American campus to take that and come back to Troy. And so if Roosevelt lucky enough to go home and not get a quick meal with her friend.
Can you tell everybody that doesn't know what year was that?
We have to Troy that way, like coming to get out of where we were just to hear family and to be in familial space.
Right.
I don't know, can you speak to that? Because to me, you all were informing. To me, there was an exchange, and I don't know how you saw it.
I remember meeting you at UCLA. What year was that? What year?
Well, we got the center in 93. We did a mother strike in 93. The all that started in early 90s.
And when did you start?
I transferred there in 92.
I transferred in 95, so it had just hunger strike. So just so you know, my son's in the audience and his friend. UCLA did not have, can you explain what you were fighting for? And when I say that I did not read a Chicano Latino author until I was 18, the university I transferred to did not have a Chicano studies department.
There's nothing, we had an office that was literally in the basement, no windows. And there was two dedicated staff, Ruben and Diego, and if it wasn't for them, half of us would not have stayed. They were the detention center. Two people with an office in the basement who, before I got there, somebody else had fought for them just even have an office. so the Chicano Latinos can show up. And everything, like, that was the hub, that was the Troy on campus. It was this big, it was 2 staff, and all the students who were there were largely volunteers. We've been fighting on the academic side for there to be classes, and the classes to be turned into a major, and we're like, just give us a space.
Well, thank you, because you gave me and Richard Villegas back there, my friend, a space. Like you gave us amazing professors. Alicia Gaspar de Alba was one of them. She studied. Yes. Who else, Richard? Who else was there?
Who else was where?
At UCLA when we were there, the Chicana Studies teachers. Gaspar de Alba and.
Well, once the censor got created, that's when they hired Alicia Gaspar. Later on, Eric Avila, who's still there now. A whole bunch of people.
Really?
Even that was contentious.
Oh, yeah.
So.
There's a couple of times we went back and we're like, what are you guys doing? When did it start? What did we fight for? What are you guys doing? Being uncomfortable in your office? Only publishing was acceptable. Like, oh, I showed up at one of those anniversary events, and I was, I guess, fucking smack. I was saying it was Tuesday, but apparently that's not.
So that's social, I mean, we have to fight, I mean, how about just have a center, have a space, right?
Yeah.
I mean, social justice is existing, right? It's being, walking into the classroom and demanding your space. 187, we lived for 187, this year 187. And what is it, the other one, the one that killed affirmative action, 209.
Yeah, almost like.
So.
We had up there.
So, for me, I didn't felt that as much as I wore a T-shirt at a reading that said suspect. I don't recall what the reading was, but if you were aware of Proposition 187, they were gonna, anybody that was brown was gonna be left on the street if they were suspected of being illegal. So, yeah.
We're heading back in that direction.
Yeah, we are. So, we didn't want to do so.
Well, we're almost at time, but since I want to give you for bring us, yeah, and we can continue this conversation out of the.
Hi, Money, I can hear Money all day.
Yeah.
I really want to say that, yes, when I was, even though I had a lot of support when I was working on my thesis, I felt very excluded because everybody wrote about Shakespeare, and when I presented my work, everybody was like, and this is when I had more poets that I talked about, and everybody kind of didn't know what to do with it. And Dr. Hernandez, who was my committee chair, was very supportive the whole time. And I think it's really just about finding the community that helps you kind of move forward. Because a lot of the times, I definitely felt like nobody cared, but that's not true, obviously. I mean, you're all here today, and I was really surprised. Like, I'm not surprised because I know that there's interest in this, but also just kind of surprised because I'm used to getting the nothing, right? But I do want to say, I want to say just thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
And I hope that this isn't the first. I hope we can continue having this conversation.
Thank you. Thank you for including me in this.
I'm giving Cecilia this handbag that went to a lot of gigs in the 80s. And rather than it just be up in my closet, I thought it was time to have Everybody turn their phones back on.
Thank you, everyone, and please stick around. I mean, we'll be here at the next panel sets up. We can stop and continue the conversation. Oh, yeah, let's take a photo.
Oh, yes.
Yes, yes.
I
Let me get the craft.
Oh, yes, is that okay?
Let me get
Oh,
the craft.
Oh, Michelle. Thank you. This is when I say, please don't
Picture.
Not today.
I missed it. Did you get it?
I'm the other piece. Yeah, it was funny because I'm Lisa with the
Glad we had.
so when we first started the
To
work,
parking, to
we're
get
gonna put
right
in
now.
our C's pronouns and start the Y.
Putting in my tag.
You want to get the picture?